conversation, Outspoken Opinionated. I am your host, Edwin Maya. We've been away. I know we've been away. I know you guys been talking, trying to do all your stuff you were doing, sending me inboxes and all that stuff. We're back. And guess what? During this long hiatus, I saw a lot of conversations. And I was like, wow, so many things happening. Cat Williams, Nene Leakes, all this stuff happened. But there was a situation that happened, and I think it affected me in a different way because I really support our Black sisters, as well as I am a big fan of higher education. And so during this hiatus, there was this conversation around Black women in higher education, the effects, the circumstances, and all that stuff. And so today, for the first episode, I have with me an amazing lady who is a director, assistant director at Howard University, as well as she does so many other things. I will let her do that because I won't mess it up. But with us today, we have Dr. Anjerrika Bean. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is so great to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to join today.
Exactly. So you're here. This is the conversation. We are outspoken, opinionated, and I know you're gonna give me that. And the fact that you in your whole Howard University shirt, it's you.
You know.
Oh Lord, we don't need that. But what I think, I just want to jump right into the conversation.
Okay.
What I think is super fascinating is your background, your educational background.
Okay.
So I did my little research, try to get to spy on you a little bit. So I saw biblical studies, sociology. Now you in women's studies, working in the center at Howard University. So how did that happen?
Okay. Oh, interesting. So, okay, I have to give you a little bit of the backstory to talk about my education.
Good.
So I'll just kind of say what my education is first. So my undergrad is in theology, the College of Biblical Studies it's in theology, in Christian leadership from the College of Biblical Studies in Houston, Texas. And then from that, I went into sociology. It had primarily like a criminal justice lens, interestingly. And I got that degree from Prairie View A&M University in Prairie View, Texas. And then I got into Howard. And I studied sociology and criminology at Howard University with a cognate in business. Interesting, right? But the way that basically happened was I was first a lover of God, and I used to just have this aspiration of knowing all of these things about God, and I didn't know about theology as a study. And when I got up, I was in the military.
I was going to talk because I'm going to ask you. I know there's an Air Force thing in there as well.
So I served 5.5 years in the military as a police officer. And then when I got out, I was just finagling my way around, trying to figure out what was next, trying to just stabilize my life. And my son, I was a teen mom. So I had my son at 15.
Look at that.
I had my son at 15, joined the military, got out. I was a disabled vet, got out, and then I had to figure it out. And so I was going to go back to school because while you're in the military, they give you all these college credits. And so I was like one class short of an associate's degree in criminal justice when I got out disabled. And so I was going to the school and they was like, you're going to have to start over. You have to take classes over. They wasn't going to transfer over. And I started crying and I was like, oh my God, I want to go to school and all this, But anyway, fast forward, I ended up calling my girlfriend. And I had saw this sign that said, no U-turn. And on my way out from the school, I was going to apply for a community college at the time. I only wanted a community college, a 2-year degree.
Yeah.
So it said, no U-turn. I called my girlfriend. I pulled over. It was raining outside. And my girlfriend was like, you love God. Why don't you just go to school for theology? And I was like, what's that? She said, the study of God.
Right?
Okay. Literally the next day I was in Houston and applying for that degree. And I still was going for a 2-year degree. And there was a white guy named Justin Rocca. And Justin said, you are smarter. You're smarter. You don't need a 2-year degree. You should get a 4-year degree. And so I started on my journey to my 4-year degree. And it's a lot of other stuff that happened into there. Eventually I got on a full ride to Howard. I was a Frederick Douglass fellow. And I finished, and it was 5 people that started with me, and I was the only one to graduate. So.
Hold that thought. Where were you when you got that acceptance letter into Howard University?
Oh my God. So I had just bought a house in Texas. But bam, bam, showing off. I had just purchased a home in Texas. I had been in that house for about 6 or 7 months. And it was 2013, and I was trying to leave Texas. I knew I didn't want to be in Texas forever. And I was trying to leave, applying to all of these other schools. And oh my God, these stories are so deep. My best friend's son had passed away. And we had this running joke about me moving to DC. And I would always tell her, if you find me a job, I will come to DC. But this time when I called to check on her because her son passed, we was talking. And at the end of the conversation, she said, well, when you going to come? I said, if you find me at school, I'm going to come to DC. She said, did you try Howard? Or whatever. I said, no. She said, hang up and call me back. Hung up, called Howard. I was over the deadline to apply. And the girl who was on the call said, apply anyway. Full ride. So I applied to their fellowship program, got in. So when I got my letter, I was at my home in my new house by myself or whatever, The letter came in the mail, and I was screaming, like what you see on church, like the shouting, the dancing, the running all over the house. Yep. That was me. I was at home in Texas by myself. It was an incredible moment. I called my girlfriend, and when I first got here, I lived with her for a year. Her son actually have a brick at Howard University that I left in memory of him. It's at the university by the School of Social Work.
See, that's an amazing story. Yeah. I think to talk about these full circles, the whole life just come and everything happened, and then you realize you're in DC and you're in Howard and you're around all these black people.
All the black people. And I like it.
I can say, I think everybody who applied to Howard and attended Howard says, I just like to be around black people.
I do. I really enjoy it.
Some of us went to PWOC because we wanted to be around some white people.
No.
So that's just how it worked.
I'm good.
It just worked like that.
Right.
But anyway, true it all, I think we all have seen what happened. And now you are an assistant director for the Center of Women, Gender, and Global Leadership, correct, at Howard University. Yes. So how did that? So we talk about sociology, criminal justice, theology. Mm-hmm. Now we at the Center of Women, Global, Gender, and Leadership. How do you tie all of that?
So interesting too. So when I was getting ready to graduate from Howard, I was still dissertating. And so I decided to, dissertating means like you're right, like you completed all your courses and now I'm just writing my dissertation. So I needed classes that I was going to take. And so I decided to pursue a women's certificate, at Howard under Dr. Watkins and Valencia Watkins. And I started the program with her, and she changed my mind around women, specifically Black women. What did it mean to be a Black woman in education? What did it mean to be a Black woman in society? How we show up, the lies that have been told about us, how we should be reframing a narrative around Black women. What does that mean? And I pursued this certificate with her. So I was writing my dissertation. My dissertation was Black. It was the response of the Black church to Black women who experienced intimate partner violence.
Wow.
So Dr. Watkins ended up serving on my committee as one of my advisors, for my committee, and she informed my work on Black women. Mm. And so it led into, I was already looking at intimate partner violence, but now let's reshape the narrative around Black women and what does that mean? And so, so she influenced it. So how that ended up being how I got to the Women's Center is by me having work grounded in women's studies, specifically in Black women's studies. Howard was looking for people, the Women's Center was looking for people that had done women's studies work. Mm-hmm. And so I'm coming out of Howard, I'm an alum, I'm a daughter of the university, the Mecca. But also I had all of these experiences academically, but I had served as a graduate student council president. I had worked in a graduate school. I had served all across campus, And so I earned it. I'm going to say that I earned it.
Yeah, and I think it's great. And I think that's one thing a lot of us don't pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah.
And I think I enjoyed, I just want to sideways, but I enjoyed, oh my God, Sherry Shepherd's best friend. Niecy Nash,
Yeah.
when she received the award, and
Yes.
she said, I want to tell somebody thank you. And she told herself, thinking she pat herself on the back.
Right.
And I think a lot of times we don't do that.
Right.
So I'm glad that you earned it.
I earned it.
You earned it. And so that is why I really wanted to have this conversation with you, wanted to talk about women in higher education, because I think there's so many branches when it comes to this conversation. I think we forget about the rise and fall of Black women and the things that Black women have to go with. They have to deal with us, the Black men. They have to deal with the white women. They have to deal with the white men. They have to. So there's so many things that happen. And so I just want to have this conversation with you about Black women in higher education and look and the experiences. And you can give us your gut feeling answers, or you can give us a HU conversation answers. We will be fine with it. But I want to go straight into this question. So can you explain how systematic racism manifests itself in higher education institutions?
Yeah, so for us, the context is Black women, correct?
Yes.
For us, it kind of starts at the door, right? It starts with the application process. And these are conversations that we talk about commonly amongst our people, kind of like in the house, but we need to understand that these kind of cultural conversations that we're having casually do impact what they're doing at the door in terms of even a recruitment process. So for instance, my name is Anjerrika, Anjerrika, right? So immediately when you look at my application, I'm not a Rebecca. I'm not a Sally. I'm not a Lauren, right? Which all of them can be Black girls too, because they show up in many ways. But because my name is Anjerrika, there's automatically an extra look at my document. Now, if I have all of the skills that are needed in this, even the interview process, once I make it to the interview process, if I get to the interview process because of my name, then I have to deal with how I actually show up. I have natural hair. I like wearing big earrings. Yeah, I chose to wear a sweater on purpose. I chose to wear hoops on purpose because I'm a Black woman and I'm comfortable in that. Not all Black women are comfortable in that. When they get into corporate positions or even academic positions that are not specifically not HBCUs, and sometimes HBCUs, depending on how elitist the HBCU is, they straighten their hair, they put on their pearls, they dole out their makeup or whatever to blend in with the background. So those are challenges that we face just on that level. That's not to say once we get into the institution, what we're expected to do, the publications, to be the tokens in these particular institutions, to deal with the gendered responses from people, because we have, specifically at Howard, we have women that are in higher education. So we like to tote our horn on, we got 9 deans, so only HBCU that have 9 women deans in our institution. And we love to talk about that. But how many women do we have in executive leadership? Because that's where the money is made. How many women do we have in tenure track positions? Because that's what we get to actually perform at. What does that look like? So systemic racism for Black women just shows up all across the institution. It's not just in our interactions or the looks or the microaggressions that you're facing because of race, but it's also the policies that's been put in place. It's also the biases that's put in place, even on those panels when they're picking the panels in order to choose you to even be at the table. So it's very difficult for a Black woman to navigate that space and then get the money and the funding that she needs in order to support the grant and the research work that she needs in order to become a full tenure track professor. It's so many layers. So
I think a lot of times when we talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, we talk about it runs straight to race.
Yeah.
We don't take gender.
Oh.
Okay, so yes, you have Black professors. Yes, you have minority professors. But what is the gender ratio when it comes to that? And so you being a Black woman from Texas, now you are in Howard, in DC, Chocolate City.
Yeah.
How has gender inclusion, you sit there and be like, are you serious?
Right. So I don't know. So for us, interestingly, and I don't want to talk about my, alma mater. I love Howard University.
I know, we do too.
Right. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And you still are, we are in America, but you still have to face gender dynamics. So sometimes it's access, it's opportunity, right? So who's going to open the door for you? We still need our men. to open the doors for us
Oh,
or whatever, So
Lord,
if the
Jesus.
men are holding the power, and we have to be willing to acknowledge that, because if we sit here and we spew, we're smarter or whatever. How we got a 70-30 split? We got 70% women or whatever, 30% men in terms of our student population.
Mhm.
Plus, in terms of leadership, you have more men in higher leadership than you have in we're still in executive leadership, but not highest roles in
Yes.
executive leadership. So you have that split that is happening that automatically lends itself to a certain type of group of people that allows you to have access or not. And access leads to money, and money leads to opportunities or whatever. So you have to deal with the economics. So y'all may be on campus, and yeah, he may not acknowledge me because I'm a woman, but I don't even need you to acknowledge me like that. I need you to open this door because I can do what I need to do once I get in that door. So, and I need to be on that side so I can decide whatever decisions I want to bring other women into this space in order for us to collectively make a decision. Mm-hmm. One of the things that Dr. Watkins taught me is that we as Black women also show up with our Black men. So we don't have a separation. There's no separation between our women and our men. We all have different challenges as Black men, Black women, Black people that are part of the LGBTQ plus community, whatever this group that you have, we all have our different challenges, but we show up together as a unit, and so we have to work through those units together in order for us to have progress. So you as a Black man need to really put your gender aside, your male privilege aside, Black male privilege aside, to allow me, this Black woman, to be in a space, and so we can come together at a table and make logical and pretty comprehensive decisions so that we can move together as a race. And I don't know if men are sometimes threatened, by that, the fact that we're Black and we're women and we're smart, and they know that people are starting to notice us and see the work that we're doing, and that there's an intentional effort to slow us down or whatever, to stop us from being in that space.
I love what you said, because I look back into time and I look back into slavery, and I see how Black men was marginalized through the entire process. And I think the only person that they had authority, the only group that they had authority over was a Black woman.
Right.
So that is so ingrained in us when we go in spaces like, okay, I gotta be careful with her, because that is the only person, or that is the only thing that I'm able to suppress.
Yes.
So it's easy for me to speak down to a Black woman and all that stuff, because after that, who else can I do that to?
It's like the oppressor becomes the oppressed.
Yes.
Right? And he's been oppressed by the white man.
Mm-hmm.
So what he's been taught is the proper character is to oppress something. And what he can oppress in this society is a Black woman. And then they're given, because white men are giving us access, they may give us access to a lower pay, but sometimes a Black woman can get access to that space while Black brothers can't get access to that space, And because of that, then a Black man who's following after the character of the white man wants to oppress the Black woman.
Yes.
Instead of really realizing all of that is white supremacy.
Yep. That's what it is.
We have to work together. We ain't never been anti-us, the white woman's agenda, you know what I mean? Like, let's fight against our men. No, when our men was enslaved, when our men was fighting, we was in a house cooking and doing whatever we needed to do to help get the freedom, for us to all get a freedom. We've been like that. We don't have a white woman's narrative. So some of the things that's starting to come and evolve like right now, and the way that people are showing up right now, like we have I don't even want to get into some of the language that some people in social media is. That's not our story or whatever, So I'm not necessarily, for me, I'm not looking for the soft life. To be very honest, I'm not interested. I'm looking for a good life. If that means I work hard, I'm ambitious, fine. If my sister want to be married and to sit and to, have her babies and for her husband to take care of her, fine. If my sister want to be part of the LGBTQ plus community and she lives with her and her partner and they build businesses together, fine. But don't condemn me in any setting, regardless of how I show up in that space. I'm a Black woman and we all show up different. Or whatever, so some of these kind of arguments that's happening on social media is also impacting our academic spaces as well.
I like that. And I want to move us into the same scenario, but just a different segment of it. Admissions. Mm-hmm. So I heard, during some research, I heard about this. I forgot what it's called, but I will just explain what it is. So for people who go to Ivy League, there is an admission process where if because your dad or your mom or your auntie went to that school, it's easier for you to get in than for me who don't have mom or auntie to go there.
A legacy student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I say it in the sense where when we look at admissions, and for us Black people, our forefathers didn't have access to college,
Right.
let alone Ivy League.
Right.
So how can this admission process contribute to mitigate systematic racism in higher education?
Explain. Give me a layman's term.
How can we break down
Mm-hmm.
these lineage, this lineage admission so that it can be equal across the board for everyone, and no matter what the institution is?
Right. Interestingly, I don't know if that's something that I could honestly say that we can actually undo, because this is money, and this is money that is exchanged behind closed doors. So when we say like a legacy student, like, yeah, you can have a legacy student. We have a lot of legacy students at Howard, right? And it's really not that their parents have to be making calls, right, for them to get in. They could just really be interested in going to Howard University and getting in like that in terms of legacy. But when your dad or mom name is on a building, and they've given $1 million or $2 million for the institution, when they make phone calls and you're a C student, you're gonna get in. And I don't know, we can put policies in place or whatever, and we can fight that legally. But I think that back door is always going to be open, and that's just going to have to be a reality that we have to deal with. And I don't know if I'm not going to say it's the right answer. I think that we should fight against it. And legally, when we see it, we should call it out, and we should have conversations about it or whatever, But somebody have to be willing to legally fight what they see, and who's really willing to. Can you go up against $1 million?
No, I'm not doing that. I'm fine.
Me either. I'm going to go ahead and try to get these A's and get in this school.
Yeah, get in this school. But you see, that's me. So I think a lot of times we look at the situation at hand, but we don't really think about how can we create the process to deal with that situation.
Yeah.
So John Mason, who dad built the library,
right?
I don't think sometimes John Mason dad needs to call John Mason and fill up the application and send it in, and they'd be like, oh, okay, good, we know who that is. Right. Now if John Mason don't get in, their dad gonna call.
Right. And his daddy not calling the admissions office.
No, he's calling the president.
He calling the president.
Or the person of the board, the chairman of the board.
And they're gonna pull that application, and before you know it, that red mark gonna turn green.
Yeah.
And John Mason gonna be in that school. So we can put the processes in place for us to try to have a more equal process, that starts in admission. But I think we have to be real about the fact that the people with money are going to have access to that space. And at the end of the day, right now in 2024, as a person of color, a Black woman, a Black man, or minority in general, we're going to have to work harder, because that's just where we are right now, or whatever. And we can't. Every fight can be our fight.
No.
Every fight can be our fight. So for me, I choose which fights I want to actively engage in. I may be your ally. I may support. I may volunteer. But my energy and my effort go to the fights that I'm interested in, and I don't feel guilty about not being in every fight. I do what I can do in my space. I'm not burning out.
Yeah,
that's also a problem as Black women. They want us to be the racehorse. They want us to do it. I'm not. I'm a volunteer. I got a little money. I'm gonna send some or whatever. That's how it's gonna be. Yeah.
So during COVID, the institution that I work for, Georgetown, we came up with this curriculum called Race in Medicine. And that was based on the whole George Floyd and everything that happened. And so they have this curriculum that's set up to educate medical students on population diversity, equity, inclusion, population inequality, what we talk about food deserts and all these kinds of things. Because if you're a physician, you're going to work with different populations. How do you deal with culture differences and all this stuff? And so I want to ask you, when it comes to curriculum and teaching methods, how can we, as someone who worked in the system and see what can happen, how can we really infiltrate these curriculum to break or to start the process of breaking systematic racism when it comes to curriculum building?
So you have to be okay with having radical pedagogy. You have to just be okay with being that person in a classroom. One of the things that I've noticed, when I'm teaching is that, first of all, a lot of our academic books and our published books come from white scholars. And even in sociology, criminology, So you have to think that when I'm teaching criminology and I'm reading a book and I'm saying, oh my God, this person has a racial analysis of something that's wrong with me, or that I'm inferior because I'm a Black person, and they want me to take the same book and to teach Black people, I'm unwilling to do that. So for me, when I see that that's what the curriculum actually presents or whatever, then I just reconstruct the curriculum in my classroom. It is what it is. And then I bring in other methods, other books from other scholars. So I may bring in, for instance, W.E.B. Du Bois. He don't have an academic book. There is no testing in the book. There is no set curriculum that is built for us to teach him. But I'm going to bring in readings, because we're talking about higher education, and I'm going to bring in articles where you're presenting with the works of W.B. Du Bois, and then I'm going to ask you critical questions and analytical questions about this. So you have to be okay with having radical pedagogy in the classroom. So although we have a lot of white books in terms of teaching core concepts, I don't mind teaching out of the space if it's just a core concept. But in terms of all of my extra, all of the additional books that I bring into the classroom, they bring in a minority perspective. So when I first get into my classroom, I always do an icebreaker where I ask all my students, where are they from? What are they studying? What are their interests? Da, 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 da. So for instance, right now, one of my classes, I have a lot of, one of my classes that I'm teaching in, I have a lot of people from El Salvador in the classroom. So now I'm going and looking up the work from people that are from El Salvador, so that I can bring in the people that are critical to their history, So if we're talking about, if I get into a conversation, so I do a lot of intro to sociology classes as well. So if I get into an intro to sociology class, well, when I get into gender, I bring in some of the people that have been critical in a space when it comes to the LGBTQ community or whatever. So although my textbook may offer one thing, I don't build everything in my classroom around what this textbook has to offer.
Yeah.
I build what's important to our culture, our community, and the times that we're in. So you have to just be comfortable with bringing in conversations that are not coming. And in my class, when I start my class, say this is a safe space, we're going to have hard conversations. We're going to push into each other. And that's okay. As long as you're respectful, you can have a difference of opinion or whatever, That's what academia is supposed to do. We are not supposed to think the same.
Nope.
So I set that up in the beginning of the classroom, and then I bring in a lot of controversial pieces.
And I like you say that because that's what I do too. And it's funny because my class that I do, I bring a lot of my class that I teach. I will bring a lot of books or articles from African authors.
Yep, I do.
Because I was born and raised in Liberia.
Right.
Most of the my understanding of race comes from someone being in Africa. Like I tell people all the time, I say I've never had a race problem because growing up, I was going around Black people.
That's right.
Now, I never even understood it until I was educated about colorism. Then I realized,
that's a thing.
That was a thing.
Right.
Oh, that's why they liked the light person, and the light person got more good because light was better.
Right.
So for me, I experienced more of colorism than anything else. And so, when I talk to my students and stuff, when we're having these conversations, I bring it up, and they start to laugh. But most of them, the American, I'm like, I'm saying, maybe one or two times somebody said something to me that was racist. I was like, oh, okay, but
based on classism, colorism.
Yeah, I said, but based on me sitting down and thinking about things that happened to me as a kid and growing up, I was like, that was really colorism. Yeah, that person had a lot of issues. They need help. Yeah. Then it gets funny because I love it because our classes are mixed on purpose. Yeah. So you have different perspectives. So people from India or like the islands, and I love the Jamaicans. They're like just straightforward. They just
me too.
They just give it to you.
Me too. Like, okay. They so candid.
Calm down. Right. Okay. I get you saying, give me a and then you have the Nigerians who they just want to take over the whole class. They want to teach a class for you. But I think those are the different cultures and different things that our different upbringing that brings this great thing to being. But what do you think steps that individuals, higher education, or even any institution can put in place to help us to start to understand that systematic racism is everywhere?
So I think it's important to us to bring in there's a need. I'm in an HBCU, so it's different for me. And I've been in HBCUs outside of my undergrad. And theology and still was a very diverse school. Mm-hmm. But I've taught in white institutions. I attended a summer program at Harvard. So I've been in a bunch of white spaces as well as the Air Force. One of the things that I don't think that those spaces do well is there's no mandated trainings on like culture competency, on biases. So, or even in the government. So I've been hired before to go into the government, actually to teach a class on colorism in the workplace. What does that look like? How does it affect their hiring practices? What does that look like in a place? There's hair discrimination, right? Or whatever. And what does that look like? How does that play out in terms of the interaction? But I think putting things in place on the front end in terms of training to make people at least begin to be aware that this is an issue would be helpful. Mm-hmm. And then how when you get when you go to school for like a trade, they make you, when you get a trade degree, they make you recertify. You get a trade degree every year, every 2 years, every 3 years. They're mandated training. I think like we get cyber training, right? Whatever. You should have cultural competency training. Like every year, you should be reminded. Also because the laws are changing, depending on who's in office, like the politically things change, culturally things change. We become more aware. Yep. We become more accepted. We have people that are pushing back, like they're pushing back against CRT right now, critical race theory. Mm-hmm. They're banning books, right? They're banning books on with Black authors. Bell Hooks is banned right now. Yeah. The LGBTQ community. And so when you have people that are actively with policy banning books or whatever, you have to be just as aggressive and just as angry about putting things into place to say that we're going to push hard and aggressively to make sure that these things are in our institutions and our students are more open, because we're only better in America if we're accepting of all of our people. If you cut off one part of us, we're not going to be as good. If you don't have a woman's perspective, you don't have a man's perspective, you don't have a trans perspective, you don't have any of those groups, then we're not going to win as a country. The more accepting we are of these different populations, because that's who we are as a whole, the further we can go as a country. Whatever. But until they're ready to do that, we're going to have stunt, and we're going to be stagnant. But we can do better. I think if you just need to put it in place, when I said that, faculty, students, and staff need to all be trained on this.
And I like that you say that, because I think a lot of times we focus on faculty. Right. We need faculty development, how to do this, you have to do that, you have to do the other. Yeah. But we forget to know that the people who are on Twitter and commenting all the time and saying what I want to do is our students.
It's our students.
They're the one who are getting out there. They're the ones who, we had a whole episode with the anti-Semitic. Yeah, we had a whole thing in our institution where there were undergrad medical students there was a whole thing. And so that sparked this conversation of what are we doing for them to really understand and have these, how can I say it? These really hard conversations. But can we have it where we are respectful in a way where you are not batching somebody down? Because yes, you might say something, and the boy from what I'm going to say in the boondocks of Georgia, from a little town, who probably want to interact with one Black person, may have a different perspective.
That's right.
And you, who was born and raised in DC, and you've been around all these Black people, and you meet this white man who just don't understand why you here. Mm-hmm. Why are you in his face and why are you in his place? Now, how can we sit down and have this civil conversation for him to understand? Right. Because what I think we don't take into consideration. Yes, my responsibility is not to educate you. I get it, but you need to understand that this person was raised differently from you.
Right.
They were taught certain things their entire life. Now they've come to the space where there's so many different people. Now they're like, oh, okay, so this is what I have to do. So I think we really need to focus on our students, because it looks like when they come out of high school, they don't get nothing.
They don't. So they don't have that training. And so one of the things is you talk about, you talked about being gone for a while, but I have to bring it back to COVID. We have a generation of students, 2 or 3 years of students that don't have the legacy from the previous institutions, right? So with Howard has a culture of, protesting. Black Lives Matter started right out of Howard, right? And that was a global phenomenon, right? With women from the LGBTQ community. That started right out of Howard University. So when you have a culture like that, when the next generation of students come in, we have a way of doing things or whatever. We have a way of owning Black pride. We have a way. When I got my first day on Howard's campus, going into our initial meeting, when I walked into the meeting, on the screens where they were doing a PhD walk, and it was all these Black students that was walking with this regalia on and these hats, and what they was showing me was like, you start with the end in mind, right? And you start with the fact that I'm looking at all of these Black scholars, how produced 50% of PhDs. So I'm looking at people that look like me that finished. So I'm not going into an institution where there's no people that look like me. We finished here. So it's a hope that I'm going to finish. Well, when you had the COVID students, they don't know what was there before.
Yeah.
They don't know. So they have this cyberspace where they really still in their mom's house, their parents' house, and they're interacting so intellectually. We're trying to build them online with some faculty members that wasn't even that tech savvy, trying to build what you've created in an academic space. It's just not the same. There is a gap there. Those students don't have that. So they don't have the legacy to carry like we did. And we got 2 or 3 years of that. Where those students are missing that is Georgetown, is Howard, is, Dillard, is TSU, is all of the schools, is George Washington, is Harvard. All of the schools was closed down. So whatever the legacies were for those schools, it's a gap. So we're rebuilding that right now. We have to understand that. And as we try to bring back the cultural things that was already there, we also need to put in some of the things that wasn't there, like cultural competency, or whatever, like being sensitive, like being understanding. We need to build some of those things in on a front end so that our students can see that this is the culture. This is the way we do academia well, or whatever. They don't get that. They don't get to when you get here. That look that's like, hey, like we're smart here. We're educated. You should talk that way. Or whatever, We're not about fighting. We show off with what we know.
Exactly.
What's between here and here. That's what we show off with.
I like that you said that. I was watching this thing online where this lady was talking about she born and raised in Atlanta, in that whole Atlanta metropolitan area.
Yeah.
And she said when she ride the plane, getting out of Atlanta and she riding first class, she just go through, nobody look at her funny, because guess what? The people in Atlanta are conditioned to see rich Black people.
Right.
They're conditioned to see successful Black people. They're conditioned to see doctors and lawyers, and they're all Black. She said now, if she go into a different city and she's getting on first class and she's walking and they're looking at her, first of all, they ask, ma'am, do you have your ticket? Ma'am, are you supposed to, like she said, she get that all the time because it's like, they don't understand, they haven't seen Black excellence. They don't know that Black people can occupy these spaces. Yeah. And so I think this is where I like what you said. We need to educate people, let them understand that, look, we too can do this.
Right. It's so interesting that you say that. I just was in Houston last weekend and I was in Target and I paid for my stuff in the back of the store. But I've been in the DMV/Baltimore, or whatever, for 11 years now, or 10 years now. Or whatever. So I'm so used to just going into spaces and we're academic and a lot of people look like us. So it's nothing for me to walk in with a pea coat, looking like I look with my hair and big earrings, and for people to not assume who I am or whatever, because this space breeds Black excellence. There is Black doctors, Black lawyers. All my friends look like me. They're doing incredible things, or whatever. So when I go into a store, you're still gonna have racism on the Northeast, but there's still a little bit of you don't know or whatever, in this space. I was back there paying for my stuff. This white man gets on the radio. Oh, such and such. She describes me as like, oh, she just paid for something. Why do you need to tell them that I just paid for what I have in Target while I want? It was the weirdest thing. I wanted to tell him off in the store. I don't need that. And if they want to search me, good luck with that, because we're gonna have bigger problems than you searching me or whatever. It just didn't make any sense to me or whatever. But you say that, and that's what I'm talking about. Like culturally, in this place, we're a certain type of people, even intellectually. When you get into other spaces and it don't look like that, you will get treated differently. It threw me off or whatever. I was thinking like, dude, let me keep walking because I ain't got time and I ain't gonna be here that long or whatever. It's fine,
And talking about spaces, talking about us creating spaces, us going into spaces, and all this stuff. During this hiatus, I stumbled upon this conversation that was everywhere. It was on CNN, it was a hit news with Dr. Claudine Gay, who I believe they said was the first Black person and second woman to be president at Harvard University.
Right.
For me, when I first read that, I said, 2023, and that's the first Black person? That was a red flag for me.
Right. Wow. How are they never? Well, we had interim Dr. Ladner.
I said, Harvard University, the first Black person.
Yeah.
And I said, I wish I could research to see how much Black money will go into that space.
That's interesting, huh?
That was very mind-blowing for me. In 2023, that was the first Black person. So they never had no Black man.
They never had exactly. But Howard started with white men too. I'll be surprised by stuff like
and
that.
And then she was the second woman.
She was the second woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Howard.
Yeah.
So for me to you, Black woman in academia space, you read the headline of a Black woman becoming the president of Harvard University. What is your first thoughts?
My first thought was, wow. My first thought was wow. My second thought was post.
Yeah, Instagram. That's what I did too.
Instagram immediately. Okay, since you doing it or whatever, you know. Third thought was she gotta be beyond smart or whatever, you know, politically savvy or whatever side. That was my third thought. My fourth thought was worry. Like, I pray to God they don't kill this woman. Yeah, that was my fourth thought. But my first thought was extremely proud, very excited, you know, like what did she do? I was intrigued. What did she do to get to this position? What all have she done? And I was looking forward to seeing her govern, but also with a caveat of I hope that they don't kill this Black woman because it's Harvard University.
It was interesting for me at the first. I went through the whole thing of, oh my God, the first Black person, then it's a woman. Oh my God! So I started researching her. She actually taught at the school. She'd been there for a while. She'd been doing her thing. She rose up from professor to direct. She went up the ranks.
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, I wonder who sat in the room, because I know they probably had a list of candidates.
Right.
And who are these people that she was able to
smart,
outbeat, outsmart? Like, who are these people? I'm like,
who's on the search committee?
All that stuff came to my mind. I was like, wow. But then I was like, did she really accept this position hoping to make a change? Because I was like, she's smart. She's been in that space. Does she know what's about to happen?
I feel like, because I've interviewed for faculty positions and secured them, I didn't choose tenure track faculty position. I didn't choose that, and I've gotten positions. And so if you go into that space, one of the things that you have to present is a change. You have to show that you fit into the institution, that you're able to pull the institution forward if you're going to be on a tenure track position, anything. So for her to be the president of the university, she have to have direction forward. So yes, she must definitely have to have a plan for pulling a strategic plan to pull them forward.
She was there already, so that made it.
And she knew the area, she knew the community, she knew the culture, she knew the politics of Cambridge or whatever, you know. So she knew, and I was like, yeah, she had a plan, and I'm pretty sure she was going to do extremely well at it had she been given a full opportunity to do it.
So 6 months later,
right,
she is, I would call it, terrorized.
Yeah.
She is scooped and torn apart, and they did everything possible to find something.
Yeah.
And they found something. Now, the something that they found was basically, I read an article where they said that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess when she was doing her dissertation, she did not reference some articles. And correct, I'm just going through what I read.
Okay.
And she did not reference certain articles. That was their thing. And so because of that, apparently somebody said they reached out to her and she asked them if she could go back and put it back in her dissertation.
Okay, well, one thing is, when I remember, when I was dissertating, that one of my professors that taught me everything about research methods, I probably spew off everything out of this textbook right now because it's how hard this class was. It's traumatizing. He said that your dissertation should be the worst piece of research that you ever did in your life. Mm-hmm. He was like, everything after this should be superior because that's your opportunity to prove that you could be a researcher. So even if you've published, this is your opportunity for us to show you how to build and put all of these things together. It's also a political space. It's so many layers with dissertating and putting that piece together. Every time you touch the document shifts. Mm-hmm. Every time, and you go back and you try to cite everything, you try not to miss anything. It's not intentional. It's an extremely grueling, hard process or whatever. Nobody that's graduating with their doctorate is trying to steal anybody's work. Number one, your dissertation is your original work. Also, let's get to this. The people who led that cause was Republicans.
Okay.
It was a guy named Christopher Rafa something.
Rafa,
or whatever. He led that cause. He was a Republican guy. And they also said that it was part of a larger, broader initiative to roll back the DEI across campuses, period. So she was kind of caught up in this bigger plan to roll back all things Black, all things minority, all things unwhite, or whatever they were trying to roll that back. So the Republicans, not the Republicans, but a certain segment of Republicans was behind getting her out. And once they got her out, they said scalped. They scalped her, which is a very negative term that they use when they were scalping Native Americans or whatever, on to the next one kind of idea of we'll scalp the next one or whatever. So with that, this woman was qualified. Even if she missed something and she did not quote it, that's not your all in all. Clearly, if she did, I don't know, I can't remember when she graduated into who she's become now. That is her first piece of work that starts her journey or whatever. It's like you writing your first book. My second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth books are gonna outtrump anything of my original work. My original work might be great, but it won't be what it's gonna be next. No. Because like any other skill you build and you get greater at it. Your dissertation is your first piece of work. That's all it's your baby. So if you make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. So the question is, I read this and I'm going to repeat it and I can't repeat it. So I'm not plagiarizing because it's not a book. I'm just paraphrasing something that I read. Mm-hmm. The question is, why was her dissertation looked at and scrutinized the way that it was? Because we all are writing our dissertations and publishing. We all miss the stuff not intentionally. I looked at my dissertation and was like, now how my editor missed that period? So whatever, how do you miss that capital letter? I'm still Dr. Bean. I'm Dr. Anjerrika Bean every single day. Howard bestowed upon me that degree, or whatever. So it don't make sense. So why did they scrutinize her? Why did they bring her to the fire? Why was it a big thing behind politics to push her out? Because she was a Black woman.
That's it.
You wanted to burn her. You didn't want her in that position. And then what happened was all of the people that had voted her in, all the white stakeholders who never wanted her in, got behind the cause.
And this is why I want to say, there is no way that they can tell me that when they were doing the search or when they were doing their whatever committee that they went through to get her in, people did not sit there and go through her entire track records.
Right.
So you were telling me that after you vetted, you did everything you were supposed to do. 6 months later, because you wanted her to speak on something that she did not comment on because it technically had nothing to do with her, because her entire institution is full of people from different walks of life. So she's not going to sit there and speak on one thing, because then the next thing something happens, you got to speak on that and speak on that and speak on the other. So you said, okay, we're going to get her.
Right. So you wanted her to have a political stance when as a person that's in higher education and in those type of positions, we want to have hard stances against anything that we don't agree with or whatever, but we also want to have an educated conversation about things that we're unsure about. And in the beginning, that was the beginning of all of that. And eventually she said she, completely stands against it. And I understand her correcting herself, but I also understand in a moment her not having a strong stance about something that she may not feel like she completely got a grasp of, understanding of what's going on. So you want me to just get behind some political agenda, where the wind blow, I'm too smart to get behind anything the way the wind blows.
And because you said it, so I should do it.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. You don't tell me what to do. That's why I'm the president of Harvard University. Because I knew not to do everything y'all told me to do. I did what I needed to do, and I did the work that I needed to do to be in the position that I am, or whatever. And I stand firmly in that. And even though she resigned, in her resignation letter, she still had her shoulders back and her head up, or whatever. You know, I'm gonna let y'all know that they pushed me out.
Yeah.
Or whatever. You know that it's them. It's not.
And for me, I think it's and this goes back again to all the fights that Black women got to go through.
Yeah.
Got their education, got their experience, been in this community for years, worked there, sacrificed everything. I don't know her personally, but I'm just sitting down and think like how many things that she had to deal with as a young professor, as a family person, all the things that she had to go through, all these probably Black students that she had to meet and let them know like this is your space. Yes, it's in an era, of course, Cambridge, Massachusetts, but this is your space. You can make your name here. And then at the end of the tunnel, where she's at the highest peak, she makes history, and you say, okay, yeah, we don't want this.
Right.
We don't want this. No, we can't give her this.
Because the ultimate thing is that your skin is black.
Yeah.
So
at the end of the day, So at the end of the day, what do we do?
Oh, we still, the last Grammy Awards when Jay-Z was talking about Beyonce, and he said you still keep going, you still keep getting up, and you still keep doing the work, or whatever, like at the end of the day, we get up and we do the work. That's who we are. Y'all can't stop us. Or whatever.
They ain't got no energy to it.
You can't stop me. I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna continue to do me. They did all of that. We talk about Beyonce not bringing this. I'm bringing this up at the point. Okay, we talk about Beyonce not getting the album of the year, right? And all of the stuff that happened with the Super Bowl. She dropped that commercial during the Super Bowl. She distracted everybody, and now she's number one for a country album that Black people really start. And we're trending a country artist now. As she became the number one on 100 Billboard, whatever, but she's number one right now, or whatever. Y'all didn't give her album of the year, but she keep breaking glass ceilings. Good luck. I win. You cannot stop me. Whatever you do, and then, you know what it is? Y'all didn't give me an album of the year. You know what Beyonce did? She laid down, got up, and went back to work.
Yep.
So same thing that she do, same thing that all Black people do. She's just an example that we could see. But it's so many Black women that are laying down, they're getting up, they're going back to work. They're still mentoring our students. They're still publishing. They're still saving our communities. They're still voting. They're still doing community service. They're still loving. They're still building families. We're gonna be who we are, or whatever. So y'all could try to stop us, or whatever. You could try to slow me down, but I'm still gonna win because all we do is win, no matter what.
No matter what.
No matter what. That's what we do.
And so as we move into the winding down of the conversation. It's been great. Conversation, but goodbye. I want to ask you, is there something in this little short span of your life, I don't want to say long, is there anything that you wish that you had done that you haven't done yet?
Oh, that I haven't done yet? That I haven't done yet. Yes, there is. So I have a really strong desire to reach people with my story. And I haven't quite got to. I haven't been able to expose myself. How do I want to say this? I haven't been able to put the things in place that I need to expose myself at the level that I want to be exposed to reach the people that I want to reach. And so my desire is to reach people that feel that life is hopeless, that the people that don't feel like they're smart enough for education, the people that don't feel like they can get degrees or have access to different things, the people that don't feel like they can be healed and whole. I have a strong desire for that. And I do it on an individual basis. Most people that meet me, they know that this is kind of who I am and how I operate, and I can encourage you and I can inspire you. But I want to do it on larger platforms. And so that's my true desire. I haven't done it yet. But God willing, it'll happen.
We see a TED Talk.
Right?
We're gonna move on. We see a whole TED Talk.
Yeah.
But before you leave and before we end this conversation, I just want to, for the young Black women out there, I want you to, is there anything you can leave with them who will be watching or online or whatever? What is it that you can tell them that they can be like, oh, wow, she's so amazing?
I don't know about that. I think it's important. I'm talking about the space that I'm in right now in my life. So right now I'm in a space of healing, I'm in a space of wholeness, and I'm in a space of creating all things beautiful in my soul. And so I've learned to create boundaries and to anything that's of chaos, I keep on the peripheral, and all things that are beautiful, I receive in my soul. And so I want people to actively engage in healing your soul. It does not mean brunch. It does not mean a spa. It means to be at one with yourself, with your mental health, with taking care of yourself, loving on yourself, creating healthy boundaries, and believing in yourself. You can do all of the things that you want to do, and whoever you want to be, whatever people told you couldn't be, you can put those things within yourself and you can become that person. You have to start believing in it. Write it down. Look at it every day. It might sound cliche, but it's not. Write it on the board. Go look at it and say, this is what I want for myself. I want to be healed. I want to be whole. I want to be ambitious. I want to achieve. I want to just be all things. So give that to yourself. And once you give that to yourself, you can give it back to others. So I love you, and I want you to love on yourself. Know that you are loved.
Well, this was the first episode of season 6 of the Conversation Outspoken Opinionated. I have with me Dr. Anjerrika Bean. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing with us. And until next time, we out.